A network configurator is added to the game. Basically, it's removed some of the functionality away from the multi-tool. So like now this is the thing you use to link like a remote signaler to a light, for example. It's a little, I'd say it's a little confusing because like you have to go to list mode to save certain things like air vents and scrubbers into the save devices, but you still need to use link mode to link devices together. So I think the language is a tiny bit confusing compared to the multi-tool, but either way, it's really not all that complicated. It's easy to relearn, and it just splits the functionality of the multi-tool. Diagonal walls are added to the game. They're not something you can craft or like construct yourself, but it could be used for certain maps. I'm just including it because it could have future usage, and plus they do look pretty nice. New combat indicators are added to the game. There's a circle for ranged weapons, and more of like a diamond plus shape for melee weapons. So they should give you more instant representation that A, you're either in harm mode, and B, what type of weapon you're swinging with, in case you have like a pistol and like a sword in your hand, so that way if you're swapping between them, you don't have to look at the orange square on your hand slots, and you also don't have to like look for like the icon that you're swinging at, because it's fairly easy to miss. It's nice for some visual representation of what's going on. Flare rounds have received a nerf, so now flare guns actually have a pellet that will shoot through a target, and it doesn't just set you on fire anymore. Drozd were re-added back to the game. They were around a long time ago, and they have replaced the Vector. However, there's a few important notes to make. They have a larger magazine of 30 rounds instead of 25, and however, though, they shoot 35 auto instead of 45, so they do less damage, but they have the same fire rate, so that means the Vector has a better DPS, but it's gone now, so if anything, the Drozd, you lose a little bit of DPS, but you, in return, get a few extra bullets. And basically, it sounds the same as the Vector, it just looks a little different, and has different mags as well. 45 Magnum has received a very respectable buff, so that includes guns like the Inspector and the Python. So now the Syndicate Python is a much more enticing choice, because 145 Magnum shot does a whopping 35 piercing damage. And that is enough to 3-shot an unarmored target, making the Python a pretty good choice for syndicates looking to just deal out some big damage. And that means the Inspector, aka the Detective's revolver, actually has decent combat capability now, where before it was almost more of like a ceremonial pistol. Objects that have batteries, such as health analyzers, now just straight up tell you what the charge indicator is without having to pull out the battery. As you can see, 22%, put it back in, they'll still tell you 22%. Just a little bit less fumbling around with batteries to figure out how much charge you have. Brigmedic has been removed from the game. There was a really long discussion on the Discord, but basically to sum it up was that it was confused as to what it wanted to be. It was a sec officer with more equipment, and also a doctor with a lot of extra equipment. The overall reason it was removed was that it was often power gamed. There was nothing stopping security officers from getting medical access, and there's nothing stopping a medical doctor just showing up in security to heal people. So that was ultimately the reasons why it was removed in a too long didn't read scenario. Ice anomalies are added to the game, and they are essentially an anomaly that makes the area around it colder and shoots out ice projectiles. Also added to the game, which I'll just throw in together, is the Omega Particles. They are a cartridge that can be purchased from... So syndicate agents can purchase 10 at a time. They deal 20 heat damage, but they also have an interesting mechanic where if you shoot an artifact with them, it causes them to gain severity at a very high rate. So just 3 shots brought this from a fairly low severity to 45%. And you get 10 of them. And yeah, the Ice Anomaly's explosion is quite brutal. It's a giant freeze-on bomb. Firelocks have received a mechanical change. If there is no dangerous atmosphere, you can actually close and open firelocks just by clicking on them or pressing E. Also, changes to firelocks is when they get spaced or the atmosphere behind them is dangerous, they'll have a red light as well as the message that will tell you that you should reconsider opening them. So if atmosphere ends up getting restored, but typically as soon as an area is fixed and unspaced, for example, the doors open themselves. But just in case somebody re-crowbarred it, or, I mean, re-closed it, you don't need to re-crowbar them anymore if there's no danger. You don't need a crowbar, so you're less likely to get stuck in areas of people, like, shutting firelocks on themselves. Defibs are added to the game, and what they do is they essentially shock a recently dead person back to life. All they do mechanically is remove asphyxiation damage. And to compensate for this, they made it so that meds like bruise packs and ointments can be used on dead bodies. So for this example, this person has 118 blunt and 82 asphyxiation. So what I need to do is I need to get their damage below 200, because if they're not below 200, shocking them back won't do anything, they'll just remain dead. However, the defibs do 5 heat damage, so you have to account for that in the math. So if I just use a few bandages or bruise packs on them, I use 4. And after using 4, their blunt damage would be down to 98. So now that they're at 98, if I shock them, also defibs take both your hand slots to use, and then you have to press Z to turn them on. So after you shock them back, you'll see them gasping again, and this person is alive, and it doesn't actually get rid of all the asphyxiation right away, so you have to shock them again. But however, though, as soon as somebody's alive, you can use more potent medicines, like you could give them a bicard pill, or whatever damage they've taken. You don't just have to keep using the bruise packs or ointments. And it's just a way to bring people back that have died recently within 5 minutes without having to clone them. On the medical sides of things, really quickly, diseases have been removed from the game. They were not maintained. They weren't all that engaging in gameplay. Most of them you just slept off or drank something at the bar. And just due to that, they have been removed temporarily until somebody makes basically better diseases. AI mice now auto-eat nearby food. They have a short little pause for eating, so they can't just delete food from existence very quickly, but they do eat pretty fast, so you have to be attentive to your food as a chef especially. They also eat pills, so chemists have to be careful, but they'll most likely OD before they destroy that many pills. Goats and cows now will auto-eat kudzu, so make sure you keep your cows close and your goats close, because you never know when you're going to need help to fight off a kudzu infestation. Scientists have gotten access to the spray nozzle in the backpack water tank, but the main purpose is that you can make it for janitors, and it is a big water tank that comes empty, and you just fill it up at like a high capacity water tank, or fill it up with whatever chemical you want. You put it on your back, and it also comes with a spray nozzle, and it even says it's meant to be used in conjunction with the backpack mounted water tank. So with the water tank on your back, you just turn on harm mode, and it shoots out basically water projectiles. And it has a fairly fast fire rate. And just to show that how it actually cleans is that if you shoot just at blood, it cleans it up very rapidly. And like, this is somebody who's actively bleeding out purely from slash. So it's a very powerful range mop. The ID card computer has had some changes done to it. Now you can't give yourself access to things that you don't have access to yourself. So for example, like the head of personnel card used to let you give all access, even though it didn't, like the hop himself didn't have all access. But if I show you in the UI, so like if I put in the hop card and I put in a medical intern card, you can't give all access. You can't give access from like the other heads because the hop doesn't have that, and you can't give away things like the armory. So now if other people want armory access, it has to be done by the captain, or the warden himself can also do it. No longer do you have to have an ID giving card like the head of personnel or captain's card. Could steal like an Atmos text card and give just your own card Atmos privilege and then ditch the other card. So it allows heads to delegate more closely to their own department, and it should prevent all access being given out very completely free. And last but not least, Saltern has returned after being gone for a good bit. It is a low population station. Lizard will probably not really ever see this map, but people on Salamander and Miros might enjoy it. Yeah, I mean, it's just a classic. It's been retrofitted to have all the new features that are required to keep stations going, and I am personally glad to see it back. I really like Saltern. And of course, I don't cover everything. I'm going to slowly scroll through the changelog just so you can keep yourself up to date. There's plenty of awesome things I don't cover and just decided not to cover. I want you to thank all of our contributors and maintainers for keeping the game up to date, maintained, and just fun to play, and keeping everything running. But yeah, that is it for now, and see you next week.